Hi there, I am Miss Hookham, an art teacher at Bigfoot High School. I'm here to show you how to glaze a piece of pottery. The pottery that we're using has been bisque fired in the kiln. We can tell because this is a light pink color, and this one has not been bisque fired, is a grayish color. We can also tell because this one, if we scratch it, it doesn't come off. This one, if we scratch it, it does. So this one is clearly not ready. This one is. What we need to do is set up our working surface. We get out a piece of newspaper or a banding wheel to set our piece on top of. We need a brush, glaze, a stirring stick to stir up the glaze. We can just use one of these here. And then eventually you'll need a cup with some water and a sponge. Okay? The first thing that we do is we take our bisqueware over to the sink. We need to rinse off the piece to get rid of any dust or oils from possibly our skin transferring onto this. So we can set it here and let it dry, and then we come on over to the low fire glaze, and we're ready to choose what color is going to go on our piece. So in these glaze cupboards here, we have all the different colors from red and pink, yellow and green, blues and purples, all the way down to whites, browns, and blacks. Underneath the cupboards, we have the test tiles. These test tiles show us what the glaze color is going to look like. For example, if we were to choose a color called moss green, located right here, and we look at the test tile, it actually turns out to be a color that looks like this. If we open up the jar, we're going to see, well, here's an open one here. When we open up the jar of moss green, we'll see that it looks kind of like this reddish color, but once it goes into the kiln and heats up, it turns into this moss green color here. Okay, so let's head back over to our working surface, and we are ready to choose our glaze and glaze our piece. So we need to stir up the glaze really well. If we don't do that, the glaze won't turn out. So we'll set this in here and wash it later. And we grabbed a nice fluffy brush. We grabbed kind of a medium to large size because we have a large working surface. What we need to do is paint 3 full layers of glaze on this entire piece. The outside, the handle, and the inside of it, just not on the bottom. So what I typically do is I will start with my glaze, and I'll pick a starting spot. Let's say the handle, for example. And I'll start at the handle, and I will work my way from the handle all the way around my piece. So I have one set starting point. You can tell when the glaze goes on, it's a dark color and it looks shiny because it's wet. As it soaks into the bisqueware, my pottery piece, it starts to dry and it becomes matte finished or not shiny. And it also becomes a little bit lighter color. So that's how you know that it's beginning to dry. So I'm going to work my way all the way around to the handle. Just making sure that you cover every ounce of the surface. You don't want to see the bisqueware. You don't want any bare patches. I'm wearing an apron because this particular color stains your clothes. So you want to be very careful not to get this on yourself or on your clothes. It will wash off your hands, but just not out of your clothes. So I'm going to get the handle, top, inside. I might need to pick this up to get the inside of the handle. And I'm almost done with the outside of it. I would then continue on and I would finish the inside of my piece with one more full layer. Once this begins to dry, then I would do another layer around the outside, the handle, and the inside again, and then for a third time. We want 3 full layers. If you only put on 2 or 1 layer, the glaze is see-through. If you put on 4 layers or 5 layers, it begins to drip. Okay? If you wanted to add something like polka dots or a splatter or stripes on here, you would do 3 full layers of your color, and then you can choose any other color that you would like and paint that just 1 or 2 layers just on top, maybe 1 or 2 layers of stripes going on here. We do have other kinds of glaze that are low fire, and they are called crystal glazes. Crystal glazes have tiny little chunks of crystals in them that you can see the blue chunks down in here. When you paint them on, they look very chunky on your piece. When they go into the kiln, they end up looking like this right here. Those little chunks, those little crystals will pop and a new color will show up on your piece. So that's another option, are the crystal glazes. Okay, the very last step that you would do then is obviously wash your brush and wash your stirring stick. And the last thing that you need to do is get your sponge with a little bit of water. I'm getting almost all the water out of here, so there's almost nothing left in the sponge. I flip my piece upside down, and you see that there's glaze down here. We take the sponge and we wipe that glaze off as best as we can. If we don't wipe this glaze off, this piece will stick to the kiln shelf and it will ruin your piece and most likely the shelf, so we don't want that to happen. When we're done, since this is a low fire glaze, we put it on the lower shelves of the cart that are blue, low fire shelves. Okay? And I think that would conclude glazing. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day.